Hello world, it's Birdo Prey 5, Qapla. First off, my apologies for last week's review. I'd always wanted to try a review with a computer-generated voice to see how you guys liked it, and apparently the answer is in. You all hated it. So don't worry, we're back to my real voice, and I'm not going to use computer voice unless it adds something to the video. Today I'm reviewing, or reacting really, to Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 1, Episode 3, titled Temporal Edict, which one might think would be a time travel episode. However, it really is not. There is merely a glimpse of the future at the very end. There are going to be even more spoilers, so please don't continue if you are bothered by such. In the previous episodes, I complained I did not like Ensign Mariner was always the hero and Ensign Boimler was always the fool. While I am happy to see this episode finally break with that formula, it was not before Mariner got in one more insult to Boimler in the opening zinger, which once again has zero tie-in with the rest of the episode. I did chuckle, however, when Lieutenant Shaxs breaks Boimler's violin for being too loud when it was really Mariner and Tendi's rock band that had just finished playing. Besides annoying the ship, it also apparently cost the life of one unlucky Klingon engineer. To be blunt, this episode ended on a laugh. The biggest laugh in the show so far, in fact. And we'll get to that in a bit. Unfortunately, the path to getting to that laugh was less than ideal. While individual jokes landed in this episode, more so than in the previous two, it was the overall message that truly hurt the show. And one joke was just so cringy, I almost vomited. Yes, it's true, I almost vomit most mornings, but I promise you this morning was closer than most. I don't know if it was intentional or just bad timing, but the message this episode sends is exactly the wrong message at an even worse time. While we in the United States continue to have nightly riots in our cities, vandals destroying public property, blocking roads, and even attacking innocent people, the writers of Lower Decks decided to make the moral of the story that it's cool not to follow the rules. Necessary, in fact. The person who believes in hard work is made to be the outsider. The captain concludes most of her crew is lazy and ineffectual. In the end, the ship winds up in the same position it started, a laughingstock of the fleet. But now this is considered a win only because the captain totally failed at attempting to motivate the crew to do better. I shudder to think how I might have turned out if I was watching Star Trek Lower Decks in my formative years instead of Deep Space Nine. I credit DS9 with instilling in me many of my values I hold dear. I believe Captain Sisko and crew didn't only make me a better man but a better person than I would have been had I not been a fan. And we all know Sisko didn't always follow the rules, and I know sometimes rules need to be bent or even broken, but those need to be rare exceptions. You cannot build your life or career on being an Ensign Mariner. In the real world, mariners fail. Even in Lower Deck, she only owes her position to the privilege of having a captain as a mother and an admiral as a father. Otherwise, she'd have been out of Starfleet long ago. And speaking of Deep Space Nine, I need to bring something else up as well. I have said many times that Mike McMahon, the creator of Star Trek Lower Decks, is a tried and true Trek fan. It is obvious to me he has seen and loved not only the original series and the movies, but also the Next Generation. In his own words, he called TNG his favorite Trek, and Lower Decks was a return to the TNG universe. Of this I have no doubt. I do wonder, worry even, if McMahon has ever even seen Deep Space Nine. I ask because to this point, other than a Prophets reference by the Bajoran security chief, and Bajorans were part of TNG as well, I don't know if we've seen any DS9 specific references. I did see a baseball in Captain Freeman's ready room in the first episode, but I only speculated that it had something to do with DS9. In this episode, however, we learn that Captain Freeman and the Cerritos was scheduled to go to Cardassia Prime to be part of a historic peace summit that gets moved to Vulcan. When Freeman gets new orders, she complains about how she already wrote a speech and learned to do the dance. This bothered me as a Trek fan. A dance? Really? The Cardassians were one of the most fleshed out races in all of Trek, behind the Klingons and Vulcans. Over 7 years of Deep Space Nine, we learned Cardassian history, diplomacy, battle tactics, family structure, military structure, and the like, but we never, ever heard nor saw anything to do with Cardassian dancing. In the Next Generation, we knew very little of the Cardassians comparatively, and if someone was only drawing off their TNG knowledge, then perhaps some kind of ritual Cardassian dance might be believable. Maybe. I mean, they did wear those ridiculous face coverings the first time we saw them. Anything could go. Now, had Freeman said she learned the Cardassian neck trick, that would have impressed me and made more sense to the story. My next problem with the episode involves the so-called buffer time, which is later renamed by the captain to the Boimler effect. We're told it's lower decks tradition to never tell a superior officer the real length of time it takes to do any task. This way you're always done early or on time, and everybody is happy. This is a clear play on when Scotty admitted several times he always told Captain Kirk it would take 4 times as long to finish something as it actually did, so he could maintain his reputation as a miracle worker. We see in the TNG episode Relics that Scotty has to explain this logic to Geordi, who is giving unpadded time estimates to Captain Picard. Miles O'Brien seems to have well padded his estimates as well, but Sisko would often see through these and demand things be done in less time. The point is, this only works when your superior isn't in the know as to how long something should take, such as an engineer speaking to a command officer who never rose through the engineering ranks. They never aligned the dilithium matrix, so they really don't know how long it would take. This doesn't work, however, when used by all personnel in all departments. Most officers should have raised through the ranks and have done the very tasks they are ordering subordinates to do. They should know the real time it takes to do most things on a starship, so buffer time would be easily spotted. Further, if they're going to go ahead with this, then at least give Scotty some credit. It should be named after him, or he should at least get a mention. While Scotty does not get a mention, Captain Kirk does, and this was where I wanted to vomit. Ensign Mariner has just been surrounded by spear-wielding people on the planet.
Circled by spears. This is a classic. What am I, Kirk? Is this the 2260s? All right.
Trying to find the specific Kirk incident she spoke of instead led me to an Inverse.com article that confirms Mariner is part Kirk, part Kira, and part Michael Burnham. With that, I feel sick again. Another episode, and it's hard for Mariner, to keep her clothes on. Again, what's with her? Her closet's missing half the things she bought. Tequila makes her clothes fall off. I guess it makes some sense. She did have a margarita while on duty earlier. There's also more bleeped cursing in this episode. More than either of the first 2. At least 3 times if I recall correctly. However, it's not all bad. There is this scene where First Officer Ransom is fighting the monster creature on the surface in trial by combat. Vindor, who only previously said his name, Hodor, anyone? Finally admits he can talk after submitting.
Thought you only said Vindor.
It's so the other guys think I'm strong and dumb, but I'm not. I love to read.
In sickbay, Dr. Tana asks Mariner if she should clean up her scars. Mariner says no.
Congratulations, you look like a f***ing scratching post.
I laughed, bleep and all. She was only in sickbay because earlier in the episode, the first officer stabbed her, so she'd finally shut up and not try to fight Vindor in his place. This episode wraps up quickly, and most of the laughs come toward the end. Captain Freeman honors Boimler with a plaque denoting what she describes as the Boimler effect, which is a policy where she now encourages everyone to cut corners and take as much buffer time as they need. Boimler is insulted by this, even though it is finally a great honor from the captain he was looking for. Boimler understands the need for the policy, but Freeman doesn't realize it is opposite to Boimler's thinking. While in the bunk later that night, Tendi and Rutherford tell him not to worry, that likely everyone will forget it soon enough. This is where we finally time travel into the future. A line just claims to be the distant future, and we see a number of alien students, including Ferengi, Andorian, and Borg, all kneeling at school desks while a teacher tells the students about the Boimler effect. She describes the Boimler effect as being named after the laziest, most corner-cutting officer in Starfleet history. A statue then appears of Boimler, holding the plaque in one hand and an eagle on the other. The eagle is described as a great bird of the galaxy, which was a reference back to the nickname given to Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry and was used as an inside joke in both the original series and TNG. Rumor has it that before the virus delayed Discovery Season 3, the plan was for Discovery Season 3 to air before Lower Decks Season 1. Since Discovery Season 3 takes place in the far future, I wonder if this scene is a peek at things to come. Finally, the teacher moves on.
Perhaps the most important person in Starfleet history, Chief Miles O'Brien.
This is where I busted out laughing, and truth be told, I'm still smiling when I think about it now. Miles O'Brien seems like an unlikely pick, and even more so when looking closely, it appears to be the Miles from the Next Generation as Transporter Chief, rather than the Operations Chief we got to know in Deep Space Nine. Once again, this makes me wonder how much McMahon even knows about O'Brien's career after TNG. O'Brien was a hero of at least 2 wars, an undercover agent for Starfleet intelligence, suffered more than most, managed to fix the flaws of the USS Defiant, moved the entire DS9 station to the mouth of the wormhole, and many other song-worthy deeds. This community's own Darren Wagner has long considered O'Brien to be the most unique Star Trek main character, Blink in the corner. And the truth is, O'Brien has a legit claim to be among the best Starfleet has to offer. So yes, this episode was funnier than the past 2. The jokes were better. The Mary Sue-ness of Mariner was absent. Boimler finally got some respect he deserved. And the only real problem was the fact that the entire episode toward anyone who may have been watching the wrong lesson at the wrong time. Rules matter. Yes, there are times when they must be broken, but those times tend to be few and far between. If you live like rules don't apply to you, you most likely will not earn the respect of your coworkers, you will not make friends, and you will not be a hero. You will end up doing more harm than good. Once again, we end up with an episode that is on the verge of being great, but fundamentally flawed enough, I can only barely improve the score over the previous week. I give Episode 3, Temporal Edict, a 5.5 of 10. There is some hope now that not every episode will revolve around Mariner being the hero, so that's something, but I'm not sure it's enough. If you like this reaction, please remember to comment, like, subscribe, and ring that bell icon for notifications. Remember, there are no more emails coming from YouTube. Please also check out my second channel, BirdoPrey5X, the link to which can be found on BirdoPrey5.com, along with merch, Dear Bop, and other goodies. Qapla all, and Bird out.